Do you ever get tired of projects that require a pile of pricey materials? In this first of a 3-part series, I'm going to show you how to make an awesome rustic texture and a cute little octopus. No molds or expensive materials needed. Just your basic polymer clay tools and one common household supply. Hey there, Sandy here. Welcome to another polymer clay tutorial at keepsakecrafts.net. Your project starts with a ball of polymer clay. I tend to work in this size. It's about a 1 inch. This one's maybe a little bit more than an inch of clay. And you want to roll your ball until it's smooth and there are no creases or cracks in it. If you're using a metallic or a pearl, which has mica flux in it, you might notice that there are areas where the color is darker than others. And that is simply because of the mica that is in the clay. So once you've got your ball rolled, now we'll start to form our heart by just putting it in our palms and putting your palms like this. They form a V, and then rolling side to side, and we're starting to form the bottom part of the heart, that pointed end. You can make your heart long and tapered, you can make it short and stubby, whatever you like. There are lots of different ways to form the lobes of the heart. I really love this tool. It's a Christy Friesen tool. It's called the Gotta Have It. And this end just seems made for making hearts. You just press it in to that top part and create those two lobes. Now you could come in with a blade and cut, but then you have a lot more smoothing to do, I have found. I do want this a little deeper. So because you have these lovely soft rounded edges already, you don't have to do quite so much smoothing. Then it's just a matter of fussing with it until you are happy with the shape. And you're not going for a perfect overall smoothness, just get the shape you want, because we are going to add some really cool texture to this using chunky sea salt. You do want this stuff that has big chunky grains to it. These are maybe 1/8 of an inch. You could even use rock salt, especially if you're creating a piece that is larger in size, then you could use bigger chunks of salt. But I think for this size project, this is a pretty good proportion. Now the trick to doing this without totally distorting the shape you just sculpted is to press the salt into it from 2 sides at once. So anytime you're going to press it from one side, have salt on the other side. So I'm going to press into that salt as I press it into the dish. And I'm really seeking to embed this in here. So now when I go to this side, I'm going to press salt in. Rather than pressing with my fingers and pressing in a flat spot, I'm going to press the salt in. As I press it from one side, I get the other side at the same time. So whenever you're pressing in, just make sure you have some of the salt chunks on both sides. Same like up here for the lobes. And this is why I said to go for the general overall shape, because this process will distort it just a little. So if you just press it in and don't leave it embedded, you'll leave marks. And if you leave it embedded, you'll have like big chunky holes, which is kind of cool. The more salt you get in there, then the more you'll be able to go ahead and just reshape the overall shape. Even coming in with that, deepening that again if that gets smoothed out. And then I'll put that in there. And keep going until you're happy with it. And then you bake it. Here's one I made earlier. I baked it at the manufacturer's recommended temperature for 45 minutes. And now you can come in with your fingers and pull out as much of that salt as you can get out. You of course this salt is now reserved for only using in polymer clay. Don't go eating it, but you can save this and use it over and over again anytime you want to add an interesting craggy texture. And once you cannot get any more of the salt out, that's fine, because the cool thing about salt is that it dissolves in water. So get yourself a little dish of water. If you pour warm water over it, it will dissolve even faster. But that salt will just dissolve right out of all of those spaces. What you'll be left with is something like this. It looks like something that came from the bottom of the ocean. In fact, that's what made me decide to put a little octopus or kraken on it. I'll show you how to make him next. By the way, if you're loving this tutorial, thank my patrons. This video was originally chosen by and made for them. Without their support, I would not still be making YouTube videos. Here's a list of those awesome, wonderful people. Click the link and see how you can join them in supporting this channel. Of course, this texture is going to look fantastic when we antique it. We can go over it with some paints and patinas and really bring it out and make just a very interesting, crusty looking object. So to make your octopus kraken guy, you just need to roll out some logs of clay. And if you want to roll them evenly, one of my favorite tricks is just to use an acrylic block that you would use in rubber stamping. And roll them out to a thickness that is proportional to the piece you want to create. So this one's not baked yet, but just to give you the idea, those might be skinny little legs, so maybe this one, that one's better, the thicker legs. And again, you'll have to look at the proportions of the piece you're creating to determine just how long you want each one to be. And then, of course, you need to cut 8. So I'll cut 4 out of this one to start. And roll one end to a taper. You can kind of soften that other end. And here's a tip for you. You may find when you roll, like you just saw me do here, to a taper, what you end up with is this hollow point that ends up crumbling, because when you do this, you're causing those edges to come in around a bubble on the inside, and then there's a bubble in there, and it's just weak and crumbly. So what you're better off doing is actually picking it up and squeezing it between your fingers. And that will prevent that bubble from forming, but still give you a taper. So shape all of your legs. I'm just going to do 4 here, but of course you would make 8. Now you can skip this next part if you don't want to, but I love the suckers. I just think they are a cool detail. I'm not really particularly fond of octopi, but something about them in art, they're just a very interesting looking creature. So to make those suckers, now for this little guy, this heart started with about a 1-inch ball of clay. His head is maybe, it's less than a 1/2 inch, maybe a 3/8 inch ball of clay, just to give you an idea. I put 6 of those little suckers on each leg, which means for 8 legs you'll need 48 of them. And you can just cut pieces, but I love using this tool, the Marxit, to mark. And the smallest one here is 3 millimeters. So you just press that down, and now they're marked evenly. Now, of course, my log here is not perfectly even, and that's okay, because we're going to want some smaller ones and some bigger ones. I think I'll just get rid of this piece, though. I mean, generally the same size. And I found for these that actually a ball made with a whole 3 millimeter section is too big. Although I think this log is maybe smaller than that one. So really, you just kind of have to test it and see. Let's see. Yeah, actually those are just about right. So if your balls end up too big because your initial log was too large, you can just go in and cut each of these in half, which is frequently what I end up doing, because often these things just start out much bigger than you need. Now when you roll these, do roll them into balls, because oval shapes, unless you make them all oval, which you could do. Roll them into balls, and then use a very small dotting tool. because I'm just doing a sampling here. But what I did when I did this one was I got all 48 of my balls rolled out. And then I looked at them here on my tile, and I found the smallest one. And I started with the very smallest one. You can just tap your tool onto it and it should pick it up. Put it on the leg and press. And then find the next smallest one and go to the next leg. And carry on like that. And what that will do is make sure that these little balls, these suckers, graduate in size up the legs. So you just get the 8 smallest ones on the very tips, and you just keep going. That way you don't have to like sort them out. And if they start getting bigger, you might switch to a slightly bigger ball tool. See, that one was oval. It doesn't come out quite right, and kind of big. You can pick it off and start again. So that's how you add the suckers to all of the legs. All right, I just want to demonstrate on this one. Not all of the salt has dissolved out yet. Although if you use hot water, it'll dissolve pretty quickly. So decide where you're going to put your little octopus and add some liquid clay to that whole area. You can add more later if you need it, but just to this whole general area. And then start by adding 4 of the legs. And you want the central part to be where you're going to put the head. So you can put it someplace else. This is just where I put mine, is kind of right on that lobe. So you just put that there. And you can actually squash that down a little because the head's going to go there. And then I love just taking these, twisting them, curling them, and adding them wherever. So that's going to go there, so I'll put a little liquid clay here underneath it. And if you're going to wear this as jewelry, keep in mind you don't want too many sticky outy bits. And I love to just take my finger and curl that up like that. Just that little push, and suddenly it's so much more interesting. So what you do is you add 4 legs like this, positioning them wherever you think they ought to go. Add liquid clay under them. That one might be a little long. There we go. And I love crisscrossing and intertwining, and you can see I often give them a bit of a twist so that the suckers are exposed and visible. So you add your 4 legs, and be careful when you're pressing from the front, pay attention to what's on the back, that you're not flattening out something. And then you would just add the other 4 legs in between those, and that way you end up with them evenly spaced out. And then you can add his head. And I kind of went for an oval. Let's see, that's a good size. So roll a nice smooth round ball. And I'm just going to elongate it so it's a little bit more of an oval, almost starting to become a teardrop. Once you have all 8 legs on, then you can press this in place. I would suggest you take a minute and take a look at pictures of octopi, of sculpted kraken, and get an idea of how you want them. That's what I did, just to get an idea of how I wanted mine shaped. Now for the eyes, you'll want to pre-bake some eyes. And you could also use beads here. But just have some balls of clay. I just have some balls of black clay that I pre-baked. I've got teeth and eyes and things. And then roll balls of clay that are just a little bit bigger than your eyes to set them into. And I've seen these positioned all different ways, so it's one of those things that's kind of up to interpretation. Remember that the bigger you make them in proportion to the rest of it, the cuter your piece is going to be. Any creature with the big eyes is going to be kind of cute. So if that's the look you're going for, make them big. Again, holding it so that you're not squashing anything. Now this might be a little big for this one. I use this ball tool just to indent. Well, that'll be okay. To indent spots on the head. For the eyes, put in your balls of clay. Then center your pre-baked eyes. You can leave them bulgy like that. Again, pay attention to what's on the back. And I keep saying that because I have to keep saying that to me. Because I am one who will just squash everything on the back. And then use some sort of a tool, like the back end of a tool, to press those eyes in a little deeper. You just don't. So it doesn't look quite so much like he has a thyroid problem. So this one looks a little, like his eyes are going in different directions. But you can always, if you're not happy with it, you can actually peel that right off and try again. Smooth out what you need to and try again. And there you go. And he's going to look really cool, as you can see from these final shots, with some antiquing and some Swellegant patinas. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but I will give you lots of links for where you can learn how to use those materials to accent these pieces. Now that you've seen this project, you'll want to check out all the sculpted projects on the Polymer Clay Sculpting playlist I put together for you. Happy creating!